Welcome to ChampionsHeart. You can't play boxing. Featuring boxing addict Johnny Farace and friends from superfans to superstars. Let's roll.
Hey, boxing fans. Got a super treat for you today. With me today is former two-time world champion and current #1 rated WBA bantamweight in the world, Maureen Shea.
Yes. Hello. How are you?
Good. I'm good. How are you?
I love your intros. You make me feel so like my ring intros.
There you go. As well you should. Well deserved. And if whoever's watching likes it, be sure you hit the subscribe button there too, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
All
and that
right.
shirt. I need to compliment that very nice shirt you have on there.
You know what? A very dear friend of mine gave that to me. A world champion.
Is that right?
Well, welcome to the show. Welcome to You Can't Play Boxing. I appreciate you coming on and giving me a chat today, champ. How's everything?
Thank
with
you so much.
in the
Everything's good.
world?
Everything's going good. Yeah, I know everything's going good. Luckily, I mean, I've been, in training. I actually built a gym in my garage, which was awesome with the help of Derek Santos and David Gibbons, who's works with Phil Dru, my strength and conditioning coach. And Phil actually had opened up a location in Pompano, so we were there training. And obviously taking precautions and being smart about everything, but it's been going well, and doing my road work. But for about 3 weeks in the beginning, before all this we were trying to figure out what we're going to do, I was doing Phil's body armor, his body weight workout. And it's totally different. Like, you think lifting weights is tough, this body weight was tough. So, people that know you can check out his YouTube and stuff, but he's got some pretty cool stuff for anybody that's still kind of without a gym. To check it out. It's called Body Armor.
Yeah, quite the era that we've entered into here in the world, right? Glad to see that boxing's coming back. That's a good positive thing, definitely, for sure.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. And the UFC, everything. But I feel like as fighters, we're kind of used to being just uncomfortable, and that's something that I kind of said to a lot of my followers. I said, this is the time where the world is uncomfortable. So step out of your comfort zone, because everybody's uncomfortable. So just do it. Don't think about it, regardless. Like, if you feel like, oh, I want to lose some weight, I want to go start running. Guess what? I guarantee you're going to see like a couple other people out there that are heavier that are trying to lose weight, because then they're just going to start running. So nobody's really looking at you. A lot of it's, self-conscious, and a lot of people get like a little insecure about things, but I'm like, just do it. The best time to start.
We are truly defined through adversity. And here we are. We faced adversity. So let's talk about you a second. Let's talk about you for the whole show, champ. So let's go back, because, your original nickname, and you kind of came to fame through your amateur career as the real $1 Million Baby, right?
Yes.
Some of these youngsters now don't even know the movie. So why don't you go?
I know that they
background on that epic moment in life that you had.
Well, I was an amateur. I was 23 years old, 24 years old, and I was training Gleason's gym with HECTOR ROCA, and a lot of actors and actresses and musicians, would come through those. I mean, it's a world famous gym in Brooklyn, and Hilary Swank had come in, and she was paired with HECTOR ROCA, advised to work with HECTOR ROCA to do for $1 Million Baby, and then I was partnered with her, and it was kind of like, hold on a second. Hi, on a podcast here. Thank you. Sorry, I have some people here. So I ended up, I met her, and I was partnered with her by HECTOR ROCA, because I think for me, it wasn't like I auditioned for it or anything like that. It just kind of happened. And I think it's because of my control when I work. I've never been somebody to go in there and try to kill my sparring partners. I've always looked for the work. And I've always, and you and I, you've worked with me too, and I mean, of course I want to land a good shot, but I'm also looking to trying to figure out, and it's weird, I can't let go 100% when I spar, when I fight I do, but when I spar, it's just different, because more about the work. There's got to be a purpose.
So you're saying you put a couple shots in on Hilary Swank, did you?
No. It was funny because I had actually had a sparring session the week before, and I got headbutted in my nose. And I think I might have broken my nose or deviated my septum. And then a couple weeks later, but HECTOR literally just came over and just like cracked my nose back in place. And it happened in the movie, which was kind of weird because it happened to me in real life while I was in the gym. And he just came over. He's like, he cracked it. He's like, you're fine. Go back out. And I was like bleeding. And I'm like, okay. But that's how you learn, I guess. Anyway, so a couple weeks later, I ended up sparring with her, and she hit me in the sweet spot of my nose, and I started bleeding. And she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then HECTOR jumped in the ring, and he's like, don't say sorry. There's no sorry in boxing. She looked at me. I was like, don't worry.
No,
but you know what?
Sorry in boxing.
But you know, the biggest thing with her was her trust in me, and I appreciated her trust and just working with her and trying to get her to learn. So it was awesome.
You actually had a limited amateur career and went right into the pros.
Yeah, I had 12 amateur fights, and that was over about a 3 to 4 year span. It was hard back then. I'm talking in the early 2000s. It was early 2000s. It was hard to get amateur fights because there weren't a lot of women. You know, women complain now. I'm like, oh, you have no idea. You know, back then it was way different. A lot of women turned pro and didn't even fight amateur. You know, but I did have 12 amateur fights. My first fight, I fought in the Empire State Games against, I think she was a former champion. She had more experience than me, and I beat her. And then I went, and it was hostile territory. I went to Gleason's. I wasn't training at a Gleason's. So I was introduced very early on into being uncomfortable and being like the opponent, but I had a whole fan base there. Like my family and friends always supported me, and they came out and supported me. And my best friend, Christina, came crying with a dozen roses asking me to stop fighting after that fight. And I said no. And she's like one of my biggest fans now. But on my second fight, I fought in nationals, and I fought the national champion. And that's a funny story. I went out to nationals wanting to fight at 125. When I got there, I wasn't familiar with having to make weight every day. And the travel. So when I got there, I couldn't get to 125 because you have to weigh in the day of. So they tell you what bracket you're going to be in or what weight class. So when I got there, I couldn't make 125. I was 127. And I didn't know how to lose those extra 2 pounds. And so I ended up, I was like, they're like, well, you can do one of two things. You either don't fight in the tournament or you go up into a weight class of 132. And so Luigi, my manager now, he was actually he kind of assisted Hector with me. So he said, okay, we have two choices. I said, no, I came here to fight. I mean, I paid my own way. You know what I mean? Back then it wasn't like I had sponsors or anything. And I'm like, no, I want to do this. I was working and going to school. So I took the fight. I ended up fighting the national champion who came down from 138. So just imagine how big she was. Wow. With that experience. I gained a lot of experience. I didn't get stopped. My nose did bleed, but it was an interesting time because I didn't back then, as the new girl, there wasn't a lot of support. I didn't have a lot of support from other females. And what had happened was I was actually waiting. Funny story. I'll tell this one real quick. I was waiting to get seen by the doctor for this fight. Now I'm sitting there and I'm from the Bronx. I'm like, man, I'm tough. I got my headphones on. I don't look at anybody in boxing as my friend. I don't care who you are. Luigi sometimes had a hard time with me being like that, but I was rough. I was rough around the edges and I didn't know how to place my emotions. So I had my headphones on. I'm sitting there waiting for the doctor, and this girl turns around. I hear her saying my name. She's like, who's Maureen Shea? Who's Maureen Shea? And I'm ignoring them. So I go into the doctor calls my name. I go into another room. I come back out. I'm sitting back down with my headphones on. And the girl taps me on the shoulder. She goes, are you Maureen Shea? I said, yeah, why? And she goes, oh, you're fighting tonight? I said, yeah. She goes, you know who you're fighting? I said, yeah. She goes, in the Kiwana Smalls. She's a national champ. I said, yeah, and? Just like that. Those are my answers. And I just sat there and I just looked at her and she just like, okay, that is Sonja Lamonikis. So that was Sonja Lamonikis. And it's funny because years later, when I saw Sonja in Gleason's, I told her that story. So it's just a funny, boxing's such a small circle, but she's amazing. She's running the Metro, the New York Boxing Metro. She's, we became friends. I always say my friend, I said, hey friend, I miss you friend, because we didn't start like that. But, she was young, I was young, and it's kind of like, look at us now. And when she came to Gleason's, I will never forget her because I was like, that was my first time. And she's a school teacher. She's such a supportive woman now. But back then I was like, man, I'm like, are they all like this? But it's just so fun.
She has given so much to the sport. Sonja Lamonikis has a former heavyweight champion of the world.
And she's a world champion too, the world champion. Yeah. It's just so funny that, we're talking, years ago, and it's just so cool when I tell that story that, but to say, she's amazing, you know what I mean? But it was just funny back then how it started.
You were thinking about how it started. So you were kind of a group of the pioneers of female boxing. You started your pro career back in 2005, I believe. Much different, like you said, now than, compared to then. Tell us about how you progressed through your career, because you were able to get a title shot within, first 10 fights, I believe.
13. It was my 13th fight. I was 13-0 when I went for my first world title. And, it was great. And I have to give kudos to my manager, Luigi Olcese, who, it's funny, when I first met, I'm full of stories, but when I first met Luigi, it was actually in the original gym. Omni Health and Fitness was the first gym that I saw. And I was in. And then when I went in there, Luigi was there training females. And he was the only coach that I saw training females. Hold on a second, I got a friend. Come here. I bring chorizo. So he was the only chorizo's here. So he was the only male trainer that was training females. And fast forward a couple of years later, I didn't know where Luigi went. I didn't know. And then lo and behold, God is my higher power, and I believe everything happens for a reason, and God has a plan for my life. And I was brought back to Luigi. And so that's how Luigi and I started working together. So he really did a good job, but he was always very supportive of female boxers. And he always helped, really support it, and really had a lot of knowledge about it. And, we talked, I started training with him, and I was turned away from other gyms. So he saw my talent and my abilities and believed in me for a long time when I didn't believe in myself. So he really manages my career now, and he managed my career from then. And it's been great. A lot of it though was marketing. And I gotta say, I didn't know about turning pro. I didn't think about becoming a world champion or anything like that. But after $1 Million Baby, I had such a thrust into a spotlight, and I was in all these magazines. I mean, People Magazine, Sports Illustrated, I mean, all this stuff. And it's just funny because had social media been that big back then, I mean, I had Facebook because I had an EDU. That's the only reason I had Facebook, because I was in college. But if it was that big back then, I mean, my career would be a little different right now. I mean, maybe not. But, I was in like paper advertisements. You know what I mean? It was like, I mean, the Wall Street Journal, the Daily News, all this stuff, and TV, CNN, all these crazy things. But it was my story. So with that, Luigi decided that, it was tough to get fights. And he said, let's turn pro and use this platform to kind of like propel your career. And I got the experience, being in front of the camera, giving interviews. But I also, a lot of people don't know this, but when I first gave my first interview for $1 Million Baby, I said, man, I want to learn how to give a good interview. So I started taking journalism classes as an elective at Iona College. So I started becoming a journalist. And with that, I learned how to give a good interview, and take a good interview. I feel that everybody, I feel like, especially what's going on in the world right now, and I'm not comparing my story to anybody else's or trying to, compare it to anybody means, but everybody's going to be faced with hardships. And what was hard for me, may not be as hard for somebody else, but what's hard for them may not be hard for me, and for me, it was just like, face it, even boxing, I never thought about competing, but I remember the first time I sparred with a girl who had more experience than me. She was smaller than me. So I said, oh, I can handle this. I got in the ring with her, and first round, she threw a left hook at my jaw. And I was like, what? I quit. I was like, I don't want to do this. Like that hurt. I didn't know what to do, but my mentality was, okay, go home, figure out how to get better, and then go back, and I did. And every time, I mean, and people talk about fear. I mean, there was so much fear most of my career, just like going in there, but I knew I had to let go of that fear and have faith in myself, and faith in my training, and faith in my team. And, that was a big part of my success was having good people around me. And I've been so blessed to work with some amazing people who have attributed so much to my career, in the ring. And I've learned so much that it's been wonderful, and I'm very grateful for it. But as far as adversity, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of fighters have a lot of adversity. That's how we get into it, But that's what separates the great from the mediocre. A lot of people thought that, like, some people thought, like, with $1 Million Baby, they thought like, oh, she got that. Like, no, I was there. I mean, when you say right place, right time, I never expected it. I never asked for it. It happened naturally. I believe that was God's plan. And but when it comes to, I always believe luck is preparation meeting opportunity. So I prepared for that moment, and then the opportunity presented itself. And I believe that's life. So there was a time where, I prepared. I was actually running a gym in Jersey. I just won the NABF title. I fell into depression. I was struggling. I struggled most of my life with depression, and I was very heavy and very stressed and on medication. The opportunity presented itself for me to move to California, and I took the risk, but it was calculated. It wasn't easy. Nobody handed me money to go and do it. I did it myself. I lived in a 2-room apartment with somebody else's furniture. I lived off a savings account that I had saved with all the hard work that I've done in my life outside of boxing. I created the opportunity for myself to train at Knuckleheads Boxing with Joseph Janik, around Victor Ortiz. Sergio Martinez had been through that gym. I mean, I saw different people come up, and this was during the time that Victor was fighting. He was fighting, Berto. He just beat Berto. He just became world champion, and then, fighting Floyd, Josito, and everybody knows what went on with that. But to be around, all of that, I was around HBO, I was around all that stuff. I was in the locker rooms with him and everything, with some of his fights, and it was great, and then going from there, I got to train around, Lomachencko, but I also positioned myself for that too. I reached out to Vasily's strength and conditioning coach, Cecilio Flores, and I said, I'd like to work with you. And then I ended up working at the boxing laboratory because I wanted to be around the best. Not to say that, my time with around Victor or Francisco Zentana or David Rodella or Andrew Gancio, former world champion, not to say they weren't the best. They were, but I knew it was time for me to be around something else. I needed to, submerge myself into different cultures, different things. And the culture of the boxing laboratory was Olympian. They were all Olympians. And they were all Ukrainian, Russian, very different than being around knuckleheads where they were world champions, but not so much of the pedigree of the Olympians, but different kinds of champions. And the ethnicity was different. I was around Mexicans and I loved it because I'm Mexican. Now to put myself in a situation where they're looking at me because women in Ukraine, it's a little different. The culture is different, but to earn the respect of all those men during those those times, I kind of like to be uncomfortable, and I kind of feel like, again, we thrive through discomfort. And we grow. And I always kind of like, and now I'm in Florida. You know what I mean? Like
Florida, yeah.
I'm now in Florida. And now I'm training.
You're out in Oxnard. You're out in California. How long?
8 years.
Wow, is it that long?
8 years. Yes, and I loved every second of it. I love my family. I still have I call them my family because I can't call them friends. They're still family. And I love them, and I love everybody in New York. I train with Terrific Gist in Paterson, New Jersey. He trained Kendall Holt. I train with Tommy Brooks. HECTOR ROCA. I've trained with some world-class fighters and super talented fighters. For me, it was more, watching those guys come up too, like the Peter Quillions, the Danny Jacobs. I turned pro before Danny. Paulie Malignaggi, he turned pro before me, but we trained around each other. I sparred with Paulie. Pavel Wale, I sparred with him. I sparred with
Paulie's coming on the show in a few weeks, by the way.
Oh, great! I love Paulie. Yeah. Every time I see him, it's just such a mutual respect because we've been around the game a long time.
You come to Florida to be closer to your family, of course, and while you were down here, of course, as you always have seemed to do throughout your career, you've attracted another great team around yourself.
So again, when I moved to Florida, I worked with Phil Dru in 2017, and Phil was the head strength and conditioning coach at American Top Team, and I loved working there. I loved being around the athletes, and I believe I was his first boxer. If I'm not mistaken. And so, he's predominantly with MMA fighters. I left when I went back to California. I came back here, and my intention wasn't to move here. Originally, it was to visit my family, and then my father fell ill, and I felt, I prayed about it, and I spoke to my pastors because it was a very difficult decision for me to move to Florida and leave California. And so, but I prayed about it, like I said, and I felt, what, God has moved my entire career. And I have to trust when I'm obedient. And he said, okay, it's time to come to Florida. And I moved to Florida literally while I was on vacation. I ended up saying, okay, I found a place. I knew it was time. My dad had to undergo a procedure that he's okay from, thank God, but we didn't know. And I knew mom was going to need some help too. So I moved out here, and I had trained with Phil, and I had also trained with Derick Santos. And what had happened with Derick, I trained with him for about a couple sessions. But I felt that I don't think our chemistry was there, where I think, and I blame that on myself. I wasn't ready for him because Derick's still the same. It was me that changed. I've calmed down a lot, but I thought I needed somebody that was a little more aggressive, a little bit more like let's go. But I realized I'm high energy enough. And so when I came back here, I had spoken to Derick, and I said, would it be, and I've always left my trainers with respect. I always said, thank you for the time, or whenever it happened, unless they, pushed me away. But other than that, I've maintained really good relationships with my coaches. So I went to meet with Derick, and I said, listen, I would love to train with you, but I'd also have Phil Dru, who I want to train with. And he was like, well, you know how strength and conditioning coach reputations are in boxing. And he knew Phil, but he only knew Phil to be an MMA coach. He didn't know Phil to be a boxing coach. I said, I knew Phil's science, and I knew what worked for me. And I said, and I knew Phil was just the best at combat sports. And I know that he can apply his methods to any sport because he's just that guy. But I said, you know what? I'm going to train with him. And he said, okay. I said, he's like, well, I don't know. First he was like, I don't know. And I said, well, if there's any problems with my conditioning, you will have a talk. We'll sit down. And I had my first fight, and Phil got me ready. And while I was moving, within like a couple months, not having fought in over a year or almost over a year, he got me ready like that, and I've been with him ever since. So now I have Phil Dru is my strength and conditioning coach. Derick Santos is my boxing coach. Luigi's still my manager. Melissa DeWeese, who's my best friend and my diet coach. Christina Marin, my physical therapist. Everybody kind of came together. Like Phil brought me Christiana. I brought Phil, Derick, and Melissa, and then all of the other boxing, boxing fighters that Phil's training now, right now. So we're starting a really good group.
Right. And you're coming off a big TKO win in January in Miami. That was a great fight for you over Martina Hortzag. Talk us through that fight a little bit and how you felt.
It was a great fight. I never truly fought at my weight class. I fought as high as like 130. I've even fought as high as 138, which was never my weight class, but I always let Luigi kind of guide my career. And, I fought girls that were always bigger than me, including girls where the contract weight was 122 or 126. And I came in at like 123 because I'm more of a natural 118, 122 pounder. And they would always come in bigger than me. So, and I still fought them and beat them. But, Martina was a very tough, she's a tough girl, a lot younger and hungry, came out. But, I have the experience. And you got to understand that with women's boxing right now. It's either you're up here with your experience or you're down here. There's really no middle ground right now. It's very few and far between with the middle ground, unless we're traveling again. And she was from another place. I forgot where she was from. Do you remember where she was from?
Hungary?
Hungary. That's right, Hungarian. Yes. And so yes, that's right. And tough. Just like Mexican fighters. And I fought tons in Mexico, and not just because I'm Mexican. I'm American. I'm Mexican, but it's hunger. These girls are hungry. They're fighting for a lot, and they come to fight. Of course, no, and I like that. I don't want girls to come to lose. And
right.
She was in it at the weigh-ins. I was like, okay, I'm like, but listen, every Mexican girl that I fought in TJ was the same way, and a lot of them were bigger than me. One of them was actually 170 pounds, and I still fought her, and I was like 132. Don't ask me how they allowed that to happen. It was Mexico. I don't think that'll fly now, but it flew then. They actually ranked me at light heavy for some reason for like 5 seconds on BoxRec.
Is it backpack on?
I don't know. Yeah, I know. I don't know because I fought her. Because I fought her and she was 170. I need to just train and I need to just maintain. Because I'm, you know how I work. Anybody who watches my Instagram or watches me at all, they know how hard I work. And I have to be pulled back. Like you have to lock me out of the gym. So it's like I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll be ready. When the time comes, I get my call, I'll be ready.
That's that beamline focus that it takes to become a champion. You already know, and you've already, you've been there. You know what it takes. You know what it's going to take. Obviously going to be there.
And I love what I do, Johnny. Like the thing for me is like, I've been doing this for 22 years. Okay. I've been professional for 15 years, more than half my life here. You were talking like, well, not more than half my life, but no, more than half my life I've been boxing, but I've been professional for a very long time. And, I feel like I love what I do and I'm getting better. And I do feel that when women take care of themselves and they have balance and they have an understanding of themselves and their bodies and they have the right people around them, you get better with age. I'm learning. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I'm playing. I'm having fun. I love how Derick Santos trains me. He's a creator. He's always like, try this. And I can say to him, that didn't feel right, but how about this? And he's like, okay, that works. So it's great. And the same thing with Phil. Phil now he's opening 2 more gyms. Phil Dru just partnered with Vaughn Sports Academy. And it's hard for me. I'm a diehard Yankee fan and Mo's a Red Sox guy, but very accomplished baseball player. One of the best hitters. So they've partnered and there's some great things going on there. And I'm happy to not only be working with Phil as an athlete, as a boxer, but to also be helping him with management and administrative duties at the gym, which, keeps me balanced between the gym and the office.
You've parlayed your hard work and determination into a career of motivational speaking. You do a lot of that. You're inspiration for so many people, young kids, women, and that. And talk a little bit about that you do.
I've done a lot of volunteer work, in my life, and a lot of it came from my struggles and overcoming my struggles. Being a domestic violence survivor and having, just growing up in the Bronx and going through a lot, getting kicked out of high school, being the rebel, struggling with depression, with emotions, with eating disorders, just a lot of different things. I found a place for my experiences to share and help these young men and women to just face their fears and just be more self-aware and let them know that they're not alone. And, I came from something, and especially, I mean, it was great for me. I did a lot in the Bronx, which I loved because I love that community. I did a lot in Oxnard, and it was really great for me to connect with my Mexican roots there in Oxnard, and I know the kids, as soon as they found out that I was Mexican, and again, the kids that found out that I was Irish, there were some Irish kids too, and there was some Mexican and Irish, which we don't really find. Wow. So I'm like, oh, we're like a rarity, you know what I mean? There's somebody else like you out there. So yeah, so that was a big thing for me, going out there and doing that. But I love it. I do it here also in Florida. I started speaking at some schools here, and I'll be doing some work with a gentleman who he actually helps in Little Haiti in Miami. He works with a soccer team of underprivileged girls, but these girls are super talented. They just don't have the opportunity, and he's helping them get the opportunities. And I want to do some work with them too.
I always love all the stuff that you do inside and outside of the ring. You're a champion in both areas, and it's always great chatting with you, champ. Well, what else? You got anything else that you're working on now? I mean, obviously working to get back in the ring, but what else you got working? Where can everybody find you?
Yeah. So I've been focusing a lot right now, helping Phil just with his business. He's just an amazing person, just always working hard and always striving for the best. And I really appreciate how he runs things as a professional and as a coach, because it's the way that I would run things. So it's been really great working with him side by side and just helping him manage, because he just does so much. And I'm happy to take on the administrative work and the management work of the Boca facility, and we'll be opening up another facility, which will, we're looking at like a one-stop shop place. So anybody who knows Phil Dru knows he doesn't do things small. Everything's big, which I love because I'm the same way. Beautiful. So I've been busy with that.
Beautiful. And I implore those thousands of you that are listening and watching, follow Maureen and follow Phil and watch these guys work. You want to be inspired?
Yeah. Or you'll think we're crazy. One or the other. We're dragging sleds and doing neck things like we look like Vale. Like, you look like freaking our Bane. Yeah. I look like Bane when I had this thing on my head. They thought I was crazy.
And you know what? Like our old friend Gato Figueroa used to say back in the day, can't stop, won't stop. Baby.
Won't stop. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Well, all right, champ. I appreciate you coming and giving me a chat. Oh, wait. There was one more thing I wanted to ask you about.
Yes.
It looks like they may be lining up a fight with Katie Taylor and
Amanda
Serrano. Brain fart.
No, that's been in the talks. That's going to happen. That had to happen. I think that's going to be a great fight. I think that, I look at, both of them, and Katie, very polished, amateur experience. Again, I've worked with both the Olympic pedigree and the professionals that are seasoned pros, and I've seen both ends, and I've trained in camps with both ends. I'm talking the elite men. And I think the same thing with the women. You have Amanda Serrano, who's a seasoned, I don't want to say veteran because she's still young, but she's a seasoned pro. And then you have, Katie, who's, a pedigree of the Olympics, but a phenomenal athlete. And so I think the two styles coming together is going to be really, really interesting to see. And, it's going to be a great fight. But the experience, I think, is going to be interesting to see how Amanda handles, Katie's speed and her punching ability and her combinations. But I think Amanda's definitely game.
What's the headline read the next day?
I don't think Amanda's going to stop Katie. I don't think she's going to stop her, because Katie is, first of all, could she? Katie Taylor's not going to be stopped. I know with Delphine Pursoon, it was tough, and I know that a lot of people said Katie didn't win that fight, but I know that was a tough one. But I think that she's gained some experience, and I just don't think see it being stopped. I'd either say points. I would say points. I say it's going to be either way. It could go either way. That's the thing, because of the punch output of Katie Taylor. She sets a very fast pace, but Amanda's a very good counter puncher. She's a southpaw. She's very strong. Yeah. I think that's going to be a big. It's a great fight. You say styles make fights. I think those are great styles. Yeah.
Great fight. Here's my prediction. Here's who wins. The fans.
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely, 100%. Yep.
Yeah, right on.
Sure.
Right
I love
on.
it. It's women's boxing, and they're getting that platform to get excited. I love it. I love what's
women's boxing is
happening.
coming back. You're part of the reason as well. Looking forward to you shining even brighter as the days come.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And, I just want to say that I don't take that lightly. That means a lot to me, because there are some amazing women that came before me, including Christy Martin, Alicia Ashley, Lucia Riker, and I looked at those women, and Chevelle Hallback, another one, and people don't realize, these other women, and Ana Maria Torres, from Mexico, and there's some great Jackie Nava, You know, I mean, I can speak of, you know, and it's just great. And those women need that recognition too, because I think a lot of people are just recognizing the Olympians and because they had the platform. But I think that people need to understand, and we can go all the way back. And I can just sit here for days and mention names of women that have been so part of the movement.
If I'm not mistaken, there could be a potential Maureen Shea Nava fight because she's in your division and she's currently ranked.
Is she at 118 or is she 122? Oh yeah, I mean, listen, I know Jackie, and yeah, I mean, if it makes sense. I mean, I said that from years ago, and Jackie's husband worked my corner. You know what I'm saying? And Jackie's a great fighter, and I mean, that would be great. You know what I'm saying? And Raul Robles, and it was worked my corner too. I mean, there's a lot of ties there, but like, if it makes sense for both of us, yeah. Right. You know, I mean, sure, why not?
Right. Well, outside of all the messed up stuff that's going on in the world right now, there's stuff to be excited about in boxing. Women's boxing is kind of coming back, so that's good stuff.
Absolutely.
Thanks again, champ. I really appreciate you coming on.
No, my pleasure. Just follow me at Maureen_Shea and Phil Dru with Daru Strong.
Awesome. I'll have that throughout on the frame here. We're good to go.
Awesome.
And I'll be catching up with you soon again. You know, I'll bring you back on. We'll talk again.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Johnny. Take care.
All right, be well.
You can't play boxing.